Hello again, gamers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm the Captain, and today I'm going to be reviewing and talking about this cool new book for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. It is the Secrets of Magic. So I want to start by giving a big thank you to Paizo for sending me this copy of Secrets of Magic to read and use in my games of Pathfinder and film some content with, like this review. In addition, I want to point out that I have some links in the description down below that you can check out at your leisure. There's a link to BoardGameCaptain.com, which is a great hub for all things Board Game Captain, and Lynn and I have started doing some semi-regular blog posts over there. There's also a link to my Teespring store if you like to get yourself some cool gamer gear, some Board Game Captain merch, t-shirts, mugs, etc. There's a link to my Teespring store, description down below. And also in the description down below, there's a link to my Patreon. If you're in a position to and like to support the channel, you can head over to my Patreon, link in the description down below. All right, so Pathfinder Secrets of Magic. So now, obviously, at first glance, you're going to be thinking to yourself, this is something that's going to be really important for maybe game masters and magic using characters. But maybe if you're in the audience and you're thinking to yourself, but I don't play magic using characters ever, and I don't game master, and is there anything in there for me? The answer to that's going to be a yes, and it's going to be kind of surprising. I was surprised by how much cool content there is here in general. Like this was something where I was thinking it was going to be very niche. I was thinking it was going to be, like I just said, for the magic using characters, for game masters. But it's not really. There's actually a lot of really cool stuff in here. I'm going to go over everything. So let's start with what's in the book. So when you open up Secrets of Magic, of course, you've got the table of contents, and then you move on into the introduction. So the introduction goes over just a brief, description of kind of what's in the book, the different chapters, explanation of the different, briefly the different types of magic, as well as, how to combine this with some of the other expansions, etc. Being that, generally speaking, you'll want to have the Pathfinder core book and maybe the Pathfinder Advanced Player's Guide, though not necessary. It's kind of important for, using some of the things in this book. Next, the introduction, by the way, is only 2 pages. Then we are in the first chapter. Now, the first chapter is the Essentials of Magic. Now, this chapter is kind of weird. I was not expecting this, and it's a little strange, and it's specifically for, in my opinion, use if you want to play a certain kind of campaign, and you're wanting to start from the ground up doing a sort of everyone is a magic user in an academic sort of setting, a school for wizards and witches, if you will. Though I feel like it's less Harry Potter and more the Name of the Wind, especially because there is a type of magic, true name magic, that is in this book, which is very similar to some magic used, of course, in The Name of the Wind, if you're familiar with the Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss. Now, I'm a big fan of that series, so I did really like this, but this part is kind of niche. This is one of those things where if you don't ever game master or you don't ever play magic using characters, this part might not actually be for you. But if you do, this is really cool. They have big sections where they have like academic papers. They're really coolly produced. I love the way they make them actually look like what they're supposed to be. Academic papers, letters from one magic professor to another, describing theories on the histories and origins of magic, on what magic actually is and how it works, and different perspectives based on different types of magic. This was a really interesting read, and then it continues on with a thorough exploration of the 8 arches of incantation, which are abjuration, conjuration, divination, enchantment, evocation, illusion, necromancy, transmutation. Now, that stuff is really all fluff. It is storyline, and it is a large, sizable portion of the book. It takes you from page 7 all the way to page 27, so 20 pages, and it's mainly the kind of thing that you're going to use, again, if you're doing a magic central campaign. If you're playing with all player characters that are magic users at a university for magic. Now, it's not a huge portion of the book. It's a sizable portion at 20 pages, but it's, you've still got plenty more of the book that isn't that. And that is, again, that is interesting if you were a game master and wanting to know more about how people in the world see magic, especially those who study it, but also could be really interesting, again, if you're doing a magic-centric campaign. Next, we have magical backgrounds. So these are a whole bunch of new backgrounds, and some very interesting ones at that. Starts out with some standard magic backgrounds, but then moves on to some rare magic backgrounds. The interesting thing here, this is the first part of the book where I feel like a lot of this content is not just for magic users. So this is a fairly small section here, the magic backgrounds, still part of the Essentials of Magic chapter, but these 4 pages of new backgrounds are fantastic and really interesting and really awesome and can be used for non-magic using characters. You do not have to be a spellcaster to take one of these during character creation. In point of fact, some of the rare ones, which are incredibly interesting and incredibly powerful, could be taken by just about anyone and just give you sort of a magical benefit from the very beginning of your character creation that you're going to be able to use throughout the entirety of the campaign. Now, I do want to say, though, the rare magical backgrounds, as powerful as they are and as awesome as they are, you shouldn't give them out willy-nilly. I do feel like if you're going to give them, everybody should be able to get one, because otherwise you might quite unbalance your game. For instance, there is one of the magic backgrounds in here called the Chosen One. And, I mean, basically, if one of your characters gets to pick this without any of your other characters picking some other rare magical backgrounds, there's going to be a lot of games that are based around them being the main character and the other characters not getting to be the main characters very much. Whereas if they take some of the others, because, you know, if one of them has the Chosen One and another one has Magical Experiment and another one has that they are a time traveler, well, then each one of them is going to get to have, you know, games based around them, around their specific storyline, because the time travelers come back from the past to avert some sort of future disaster, and they're going along with the Chosen One, who is the one who is supposed to help the world onto a greater path, along with the character who is a magical experiment, who is part of some unknown prophecy, again to help secure a better future for the world. Again, as you can see, if you mix and match powerful, rare magical backgrounds to the different characters in the group, it can be fine. I just don't recommend letting one of your players take one of these and everybody else taking a common background. That'd be a bit iffy. It'd be like one of your players getting to play as Neo from The Matrix, while everyone else were the other characters from The Matrix, who are just sort of along for the ride, because he's the chosen one. All right, so now we move on to Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is classes, and this is a no beating around the bush, my favorite part of this book, because there are 2 new classes in here, and they are awesome. I absolutely love the new classes. So the new classes are the Magus and the Summoner. So now both of these are magic users plus. They're kind of classes that do a little bit of multi-classing, sort of, because the Magus, as an example, is a magic user fighter. They have some really good abilities in fighting, and because of it, they take some negatives to their magic using. Now, the main detriment they get in regard to their magic using, they're not weaker at magic using, it's just that because they have a lot of their focus on fighting styles as well, they don't get to remember as many spells as other magic users. So they have a lower amount of spells. Generally speaking, they remember their most powerful spells and their cantrips, but stuff in the middle, stuff that's more powerful than cantrips but weaker than the top 2 levels of spells, they kind of forget about. They don't use very much. But then as a really cool ability, they got this awesome thing called Spell Strike, where they're allowed to cast one of their spells into their weapon, and then when they strike with that weapon, it does the normal damage for the strike, plus the spell damage, which is insane. So you can power up your weapon with like fire or lightning and then hit someone. And again, it's like doing 2 attacks at once, except you're not having to get the huge multi-attack penalty. So it's basically like using your 3 actions to charge up a single all or nothing hit. Which is really kind of cool. It's really interesting. They also, of course, this is a full class, so it includes all of the different things you get as you go up levels, plus, of course, all of the possible feats that you can take every time you're able to take class feats, and there are a lot of them, and they're very interesting. I think the Magus is an excellent addition to the variety of classes in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Really like the Magus. As much as I like the Magus, though, I like the Summoner more. The Summoner is even cooler. Now, similarly, the Summoner, again, feels like they are sort of kind of multi-classing, and they take the same disadvantage that the Magus does, where they only really focus in on their most powerful couple of levels of spells, plus their cantrips. Everything in the middle is kind of like forgotten about. But instead, they are linked to this powerful creature called an Eidolon that they summon up, and in battle, they're able to combine... they are able to use their actions for either their character or the Eidolon. Not in battle, you can kind of use the Eidolon as an NPC that is directly linked to the magic user. They will not ever argue and have a fight and thoroughly disagree with them, but they could be a very interesting NPC. The Eidolon can take all sorts of amazing forms. They can be a dragon or a demon or a celestial or a giant mix of animal parts or all sorts of different things, which is really cool. But now, in regard to combat, when you first hear that you have to split your actions amongst you and the Eidolon, you're thinking, okay, well, that kind of stinks. I'd rather the Eidolon get all their own actions. They have an ability for that. So they have this really cool ability called Act Together. So what happens is you take 1 to 3 actions to do an act together. And what happens is one of your characters, either your character or the Eidolon, takes an action that costs that whatever the act together action was costs that many actions. So remember, you get 1 to 3 actions to choose from, because of course you can take up to 3 actions in a combat round. So let's say you pick 2. You say, I want to do a 2 action spell with my main character. Then in addition, while you're doing that 2 action spell with your character, the Eidolon, who of course gets to act together with your character, gets a free 1 action of any kind. So you could do an attack or some kind of special action that takes 1. Or you could do the reverse. You could let them do a 2 action action and allow your main character to do 1. This is a great way to get extra actions out of your characters and do lots of really cool things. I especially like the 2 action version of it because that lets you cast a lot of interesting spells while letting your Eidolon also do a free attack. And then you have a 3rd action to do something else, like maybe get 1 more attack with either your character or the Eidolon. The Eidolons are really interesting, and the feats, there are a lot of feats that involve powering up your Eidolon, making them bigger, allowing you to ride on them, things like that. And again, there's tons of varieties of Eidolons, very customizable. I love the whole concept of the Eidolon. Again, so interesting. Love the feats, love the Eidolon, love the Summoner. The Summoner is great. This is probably one of my favorite character classes they have ever done. Absolutely love it. Okay, so now let's move on. We get multi-class archetypes. So of course, all the other classes that there have been, there are multi-class archetypes for Magus and Summoner. So this allows your fighter or champion or wizard or what have you to multi-class as a summoner or a magus, and that is really cool, and I'm glad that they did that because of course you might want to get some of those cool abilities. Next we get into the chapter 3, which is the spell chapter. Now this is a giant toolbox of tons of new spells. So to start with, we've got a list of all the spells and their basic descriptions like they normally do anytime they list spells. And they are listed by spell type, of course. Or do they fall into the arcane spell list, the divine spell list, the occult spell list, the primal spell list? Then we get the full alphabetical listing of all the spells with their full descriptions like we normally do since the original rulebook. So these are great. There are a ton of awesome spells in here that add a ton of variety of options to your spellcasting characters. Now, this is one of the areas of the book that is a little, again, back focused on spellcasters. So again, this is one where if you like to play spellcasting characters or thinking of playing a spellcasting character or are a game master and want to have lots of options both for your players and your NPCs, this is a fantastic chapter for you. Other people might find this to be not as much for them. So this is, like I said, this is not one of the things that is for everybody. Don't worry though, the chapters that are really kind of for everybody are coming up. But I do want to say when we're done with the basic new spells that are added, we get to a list of new focus spells because the Magus and the Summoner are both able to take focus spells in addition to their regular spellcasting. So there are lists of new focus spells here specifically for the Magus and Summoner, and there are some really good options. Next, we get into rituals. Now, remember, rituals can be done by anybody. They don't have to be done by magical characters. Because as long as you have the instructions to the ritual, anyone can carry them out. They take large amounts of time and lots of preparation. But there's some really cool new rituals in here, some very interesting things that, for instance, your characters could come across during a game, if you're the game master, written in an ancient tome, an ancient text on how to do these specific rituals. Next, we have Chapter 4, Magic Items. Now, here is the area where I was really most surprised by. Because, generally speaking, like I said, when I was going into this, I was thinking this was just going to be really stuff for magic users. But here with the magic items section, this is the bit that's for everybody. This is really the chapter that is most for every type of player or game master in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, because there are ludicrous amounts of new magic items and whole new categories of magic items. So we've got Fulus, which are these paper magic items. They're very similar to talismans. They're like one use and then they're done. The Fulus are very interesting. Then we have Grimoires, which are like super powerful spell books that when you use them to cast spells, they add extra abilities to the spells. They're magical items in their own right. The grimoires are fantastic. I really like them. Then we have magical tattoos. Tattoos that can be tattooed onto someone and give them very interesting magical abilities. Again, anyone, not even just magical characters. The person who does the tattoo has to have the ability to make magical tattoos, but once you have it, you can just use it. Then we have ways to make personalized staves. This is one of the less interesting bits to me because I think the staves are already varied enough to be fairly personalized. But you can have very personalized staves, really made based on the spells that your character uses. Next, we have spell catalysts. These are magical super spell ingredients. Every time you need actual spell ingredients to cast a spell, these are magical ingredients. They cost you some extra money to use, but they will give you awesome bonus effects to your spells. Really, really cool item. That one, though, is, again, specifically for actual spellcasting character classes. Next, we have a type of magical item that I wish there was forever, spell hearts. Now, spell hearts are essentially reusable talismans, because there's so many talismans out there that have amazing abilities, but then you use them once and they're gone. Spell hearts can be reused. These are fantastic. I really like the spell hearts. I think they should have been in the game since the beginning. Then we have a bunch of new consumable magical items, things that are one use, but again, add some new variety, some interesting new different things that you can do. And then we have a bunch of new permanent magical items. These are weapons, these are tools, these are bits of armor, these are magical card decks, these are all sorts of interesting magical items. I don't want to ruin everything that's in here for you, except to say that I had a great time reading through these magical items, and there are some in particular that are really, really going to add some interesting variety if you, the game master, decides to get this book and add them into your campaign. That could be really, really cool. Now, the final real chapter to this book, Chapter 5, is the Book of Unlimited Magic. Now, I say real chapter because, of course, there's always a glossary and index in the back, but I don't really count that as a chapter. So the Book of Unlimited Magic is a listing of other types of strange types of magic that are a little bit different, that you can use if you take certain archetype feats or things like that. So the first type is cathartic magic, which is a magic that is highly based on the emotional state of your spellcaster. You do need to take an archetype feat to start taking cathartic magic, but it allows you to do these when your emotional trigger happens, whether that be anger or joy or whatever it is, you have that emotion, you can suddenly tap into these amazing powers, get some incredibly powerful spell casting, but then after the fight, you're like totally drained. Really interesting thing. It makes a very interesting, different way to be a spellcaster where you go nuts when your emotion is triggered and do crazy stuff, but then you need time to recover, or if you can't, you're not going to be as good at spellcasting for a while. Next, we have elementalism, which is again based on some feats that allow you to more focus on certain elements over others. This is the sort of thing to do for someone who's using a lot of primal magic. If you really want to focus in on certain types of elements. Then we have some new monk stances, which again add some new variety to some monk abilities, which is really cool. Next, we have a flexible preparation archetype. Now, the flexible preparation is kind of interesting because it's like a hybrid of the prepared spell users like the wizard with the spontaneous spell users like the sorcerer. So the thing is, you get less spell slots, but you're allowed to like swap out spells. You can actually have a variety that you can cast. This is for a prepared spell user like a wizard who wants to get more flexibility in being able to cast spells that they didn't think of to prepare, kind of like a wizard. It's sort of a half measure. Basically, I do feel like in this case, if you wanted to do that, just be a sorcerer. But it's an interesting another option. It's like a halfway point. Next, we have the Geomancer archetype, which again is another thing you have to dedicate yourself to. Followed by there's leyline magic. You can seek out ley lines to get incredible power from them, and then alter ley lines and create ley line nodes and such. Feels a little bit like they're hitting some stuff from like rifts into here, but that's really cool. Then we have the concept of pervasive magic. You go play in a world where just about everybody uses magic. So this really feeds back into that whole University of Magic idea. If you wanted to play a game where magic was super prevalent and everybody had at least a little bit of magic, reminds me a little bit of the world from the old HBO movies, Cast the Deadly Spell and Witch Hunt, which were loosely based on H.P. Lovecraft, and it was like a private detective story where in a world where everybody used magic and the main character was a character named Lovecraft. Very interesting couple of movies if you've never seen them from back in like the 80s and 90s. So then they also talk about, though, with the pervasive magic, there is a way to do them even in the general standard setting. There are certain areas where major magical catastrophes have happened and magic is still super pervasive. People living over there will have that general pervasive magic feel. Then we have shadow magic, the ability to use magic from the plane of shadow. This is really kind of creepy but interesting. Shadow casters are a archetype. Again, you have to start by taking the particular feat to dedicate yourself to shadow magic, but then you get access to shadow familiars and some interesting abilities. Then we have soul seeds. So soul seeds are these weird sort of things. They're kind of like magical items that you bind with yourself, and they give you this just continuing magical effect. This is something that is available to just about anybody if you decide to include it in your game. A lot of this stuff feels like tools in a toolbox. Like these are things that you could include, but you don't have to. Then we have soul forged armaments, which is another type of magical item that is like bound to your soul, whether it be weapons or armor, and gives you some interesting, really cool upgrades. Lots of options in there. And then we have Thessalonian rune magic, which again is another way to do a class archetype with a slightly different way of casting spells. Then we get to the true name magic. This I found to be one of the most interesting different types of magic. Again, there's a ton in here. I've glossed over some of them. They are worth a read. Some interested me more than others. And this one is really cool because you can spend time researching, trying to discover the true names of things, like the name of the wind. And then once you have the true name of something, you could do things like threaten to reveal their name to get them to do what you want, or try to use abilities where you literally invoke their name to command them. This includes even specific creatures if you can find their name. After we get through naming magic, we have Wellspring magic, Wellspring magic is another class archetype, again, that allows you to surge and power up spells to make them more powerful, similar to the cathartic magic from the beginning of the chapter, except in this case, instead of leaving you drained at the end, there's a risk of your magic going haywire. I found this one to be more interesting, because there's this giant table where your magic can go haywire and sometimes have amazingly positive effects, or sometimes negative effects, sometimes crazy effects that you're not really sure. It depends on the situation whether or not they'll be positive or negative. I was a big fan of Wellspring magic. I like the surges. I like the random table. I think that's really fun and really interesting. Gives you extra ability, but at a risk. Finally, of course, we have the glossary and index, and that is the end of the book for Secrets of Magic. So now you see this book is kind of a 50-50 split. You've got 50% of it is really all about magic using characters, and therefore would very much interest people who play as magic users and game masters for using for NPCs and villains and such. But then you have the other half of the book is just generally awesome for everybody. New backgrounds, new magical items, new types of magical items, all sorts of things that any player character really would like. I mean, any player character might like the ability to pay someone to do a magic tattoo on them. Any player character might like the ability to have talismans that are reusable. I mean, these things are great. These are really cool. This is a fantastic toolbox with lots of options. So, firstly, the first group of people I'm going to recommend this book to: Game Masters. If you're a Game Master and you're running Pathfinder 2e, or you're thinking of running Pathfinder 2e, there's a lot of cool options in here. This might not be the sort of thing you're going to want to try to add in on your first ever Game Mastered campaign of Pathfinder 2e, but maybe you're already used to the system. You want to make a new campaign. You want your new campaign to be kind of different. You want to add in some real interesting variety. There's some great stuff in here to mix it up, to really change it up. Also, of course, spellcasters. People who like playing spellcasters are going to want to have this just for the new variety of spells alone, let alone the new spellcasting character classes and ancestries, etc. But in general, also, if you are a person who likes to buy stuff that has, toy box type things in it, lots of cool items you can use and check out and be interested in, tell your game master, hey, I want to be on the lookout to buy this thing. Yeah, this book might be for you too, because there's a ton of really cool toys in here. I really like Secrets of Magic. I think this book is absolutely fantastic. I know I might sound like I'm raving, but I think this is one of the best expansions they have ever done for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. This book is really cool. I really like it. It's exactly what I want out of a magic-centric expansion to Pathfinder 2nd Edition, which is why I have decided to give Secrets of Magic 9.5 stars out of 10. I really like this book a lot. I don't know if you can tell. I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. I'm thinking about actually, if I get some spare time, reading through it again, or at least focusing in more in depth on some of the areas that I would like to do more study on. And I'm also thinking it would be really cool to be able to possibly use some of this in a game of Pathfinder. I think my current game, unfortunately, is far enough along that it might be a little disruptive to introduce some of this now, but maybe in a new campaign. Maybe if I were to start a new campaign, especially because I would like to offer my players the option to pick some of these new ancestries and new character classes as well that are really cool in here. So yeah, 9.5 stars out of 10. Really like Secrets of Magic. Really highly recommend it to you. So there you go. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns on either this product for Pathfinder 2nd Edition or this video, feel free to put them in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this review of a role-playing game product and you'd like to see me do more like it, be sure to give this video a like, share it on all forms of social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.